Hello again, people of the space. rLounge here. Today, we dust off our no BS guide to protecting your emotional space and learn the how-tos of setting boundaries with monster-in-laws. Strap on your bulletproof vests. We're in for heavy fire. Right into the front line in our first story. Our ammo, self-awareness, and healthy boundaries. Mother-in-law acts like I'm ruining her life. I need advice on how to set a boundary with mother-in-law without her removing it. Sorry, this will be long. TW, baby. Backstory. I'm 30 female, and significant other's a 36 male. I've been with a significant other for 4 years. He has an intellectually disabled 11-year-old female from a crazy ex. Mother-in-law guilted him to do the right thing and stay with his ex for 6 years before he smartened up and got out. Ex is abusive in every way. Over the years, mother-in-law has acted like 11-year-old female's mom and was very hands-on in telling the significant other how to raise him. Rather than argue, he did whatever she said. The 11-year-old female is an entitled brat who has no consequences or rules. I came into the picture and significant other begged me to parent 11-year-old female with him. I'm strict but fair. Example, at 11, you should put your own toys away before bed and eat the food made for you. Mother-in-law says I'm basically Hitler. Her grandbaby shouldn't have chores. Mother-in-law used to visit 2 to 4 times a year, 2 or more weeks at a time. This was to watch the 11-year-old female while significant other was working out of town. Once I moved in with significant other, it was my responsibility to watch the 11-year-old female on those occasions. For the last year, mother-in-law showed up and acted confused as to why she couldn't help me. I didn't need or want her help. She openly compares me to his exes. To keep the peace, I let her help. Until the last time when I caught mother-in-law sneaking cookies, marshmallows, candy, and chips into her room so 11-year-old female could eat them for breakfast with her. Significant other, father-in-law, and brother-in-law yelled at her to stop disrespecting me as a parent and our house rules. I made her leave that week. Mother-in-law said I lied, but I took photos of them in bed with that garbage and sent them to the significant other, who bought her a plane ticket home. Fast forward 2 years. Significant other and I got married last year. Just us and witnesses. Mother-in-law was upset she couldn't be there in person. She's constantly whining she's missing everything and is always trying to come visit for months on end. Thank you, COVID, for making her stay home. After the wedding, we announced I was 4 months pregnant with a rainbow baby. We had 3 miscarriages that same year. Mother-in-law started making plans to take 11-year-old female once I had the baby, so 11-year-old female didn't feel ignored. We never asked her to do that or knew that was her plan. My mom works 12 hours, 6 days a week, so she couldn't come watch 11-year-old female while I was in the hospital delivering. Mother-in-law came. Significant other made sure I never saw her before or after delivery. I was eclamptic and had a complicated induction and birth. But I was sent home the same day I delivered. We decided to video conference call the mother-in-law, father-in-law, brother-in-law, my mom and brother, and 11-year-old female to meet the newborn. Mother-in-law talked over my significant other to tell us what the 11-year-old female and her were doing and eating that week. Needless to say, mother-in-law ruined the introduction of the newborn. Mother-in-law went home that afternoon. I ended up back in the hospital the next day for another week. Mother-in-law flew back out to watch 11-year-old female with significant other when he wasn't at the hospital with me. I let mother-in-law guilt me into her meeting the newborn after I was released the second time, but she had to wear a mask and stay 6 feet from him at all times. She refused to wear a mask, and significant other just enforced to stay 6 feet away then. We sent her home the next day when we caught her breaking into the nursery to hold the newborn. This is where my final straw comes in. 2 weeks after I was released from the hospital the second time, I had a vertebral artery dissection, VAD, and it caused a cerebellum stroke. I lost my sight, was in constant vertigo, and couldn't stand up. All temporary and thankfully lessened over the week in the hospital. I wasn't allowed visitors, but the staff knew I had a 2-week-old newborn, so they put me on the ground floor with a big window so I could see the significant other and newborn. Significant other's coworkers dropped off food, ran errands, and helped him as much as they could while I was in the hospital and started rehab. Mother-in-law tried to come out, but significant other stood firm that she broke our boundary only 2 weeks ago, so no thanks. I was allowed to go home after 1.5 weeks in the hospital while attending outpatient rehab. While in the hospital, I developed depression. Mix that with neurofatigue, a newborn, significant other's crazy ex, mother-in-law, and entitled 11-year-old female, I was a mess. It took weeks to find a rhythm. Luckily, newborn was incredible and basically never cries and slept 6 hours at a time. I've had to pump to bottle feed because I can't bend my neck, so significant other has been helping with night feedings. Newborn is 7 months old tomorrow. 11-year-old female has calmed down a lot once she saw how newborn needed more attention. She's still entitled from time to time, but significant other has been better at correcting that. 11-year-old female has even started playing with the newborn. Mother-in-law has not visited since she broke our boundary of 6 feet, only because father-in-law can't afford to send her and we refuse to pay. Mother-in-law video calls 11-year-old female 2 or more times a week. Mother-in-law has told 11-year-old female she could cry to get significant other's attention, ignore me, reminds her I'm not her real mom, so she doesn't have to listen to me. She doesn't have to play quiet during the 1 hour 30-minute nap newborn has when she's home from school because babies need to sleep through sounds. They do, yes, he does. But slamming a ball on a shared kids' wall is excessive. Mother-in-law's idea. Mother-in-law sends gifts for 11-year-old female constantly because clearly we neglect to show 11-year-old female love since newborn's arrival. Significant other has asked her to stop. I reached out to brother-in-law, who just got divorced due to his wife and mother-in-law not getting along. Imagine finding out you're infertile after 4 years of trying for a baby and having your mother-in-law text you daily asking if you're pregnant or broken. To ask his advice, and he said he would talk to mother-in-law. Mother-in-law sent a baby blanket for newborn, but it had things for 11-year-old female on it. Who has her own baby blanket from mother-in-law? There was something on the blanket for everyone but newborn and me. I can see how mother-in-law is going to make newborn feel less loved because he wasn't mother-in-law's first grandchild. I want to cut her from newborn's life. Now mother-in-law is at war with me, her words. I only knew this because brother-in-law warned me. Mother-in-law is scheduled to visit Mother's Day weekend. My first Mother's Day after having newborn. Every previous year, 11-year-old female would celebrate with me. Mother-in-law would call to remind us I'm not her real mom, and 11-year-old female should call her abusive bio mom to wish her a happy Mother's Day. Then, when significant other and I call her out on this, she says she was kidding and never said that. I caught wind mother-in-law has special plans for my first real Mother's Day. She wants to take 11-year-old female out for the day so I can celebrate with my real child. No, 11-year-old female is my other child, blood or not. Mother-in-law also wants us to cook her favorite meal for 11-year-old female, her, significant other, and newborn while I go have some me time. I should add, I have not been able to leave my son alone willingly with anyone, except a 74-year-old female I'm very close with that was our neighbor for years. She's family and follows our rules to a T. Very respectful Nana. I will never leave newborn alone with her mother-in-law ever. She is a big reason 11-year-old female is in therapy and has an entitled issue. Significant other and I came up with a plan that puts us in public most of the day. My mom is coming to celebrate and be backup. Mother-in-law will have to follow public rules, so less policing from us. In my opinion, mother-in-law is super toxic. She had a crap childhood and says she's living her childhood out now with 11-year-old female. Weird. I would cut her out of my life as I do toxic people, but significant other can't do it. I come from many abusive past relationships, whether romantic, familiar, or business. I always try to make them work. I've been in therapy for 6 years to work on people-pleasing, anxiety, and now 11-year-old female and mother-in-law. I have tried putting boundaries in for years, only to have them ignored. We can't afford to put her in a hotel, so she has to stay with us. I've been losing the little sleep I get over this for weeks. Mother-in-law says she'll watch the kids, and I have 11-year-old female help with newborn. We don't allow that as she's expressed harming him previously, thus her therapy. Mother-in-law constantly texts significant other with her ideas of things she's going to do when she's here for 2.5 days. Our nursery is limited to visitors due to COVID and the bugs going around. No one but significant other and I go in there. Help. How do I keep her from breaking all the rules and boundaries and sending me into an anxious depression spiral? Thank you. First of all, you're doing a fantastic job so far, and kudos to you for healing and going to therapy despite all that has happened to you. Second of all, congratulations on your new baby. Although it really sounds like you're doing this, it's crucial to sync up with your significant other. Partners need to be on the same page about what boundaries they want to enforce with their parents and how to enforce them. Otherwise, there's no change in successfully offering limits. Often, what you give is what you receive, so think about what your mother-in-law may be feeling during certain situations and try to adjust your attitude and perception accordingly. You cannot, and should not, be the one to compromise, but definitely be open to some give and take. Be a negotiator. Try to create a win-win. And, most importantly, remember that you are modeling behavior for your children. Also, don't compete. Romantic love and parental love are totally different. In some cases, you may have to spell this out for your overbearing mother-in-law. If you sense any sort of competitive atmosphere emerging, endeavor to diffuse it as quickly as possible. First, acknowledge the situation. Then, encourage your significant other to spend some quality alone time with his mom every now and then. All in all, it's important you communicate and stick to your boundaries. You're not responsible for how she reacts or the emotions she feels. Setting boundaries is difficult. If you find these approaches aren't working, I recommend seeking professional support. What are some ways you've created boundaries with a family? What worked for you? What didn't work? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Our first community comment comes from Floss147. I think if she can't afford a hotel, then she shouldn't come because she's not going to respect you or your boundaries. You don't need that at all, and your children don't need that. I know your significant other doesn't want to cut her off, but he needs to realize he needs to protect his children and partner before making mommy happy. Our next comment comes from Christiania83. Holy crap, why do you let her into your lives at all? Go no contact. The OP replies, significant other will not do it. He says, that's just who she is. Christiania83 replies again, sounds like you have a significant other problem too. The OP replies again, very much agree. No idea how to conquer that either. Dealing with it in solo therapy for now. Hoping to convince him to join me. And one more comment before moving on from Dirty Socialist Hippo. He needs his own individual therapy. You've been doing the work for years. His turn. If everyone around you is in therapy and you're not, take a clue, dude. Our second story takes place behind enemy lines. I found out my mother-in-law was never a good mother the hard way. I, 29 female, live with and have dated my fiance, 28 male, for 6 years. 3 years ago, my fiance tore his ACL and ligament in his left knee while playing soccer with his friends. I, at the time, was a manager of a boutique, making about $22 an hour. We had little rent to pay because we live in my parents' building. His mom was living in a room and had no other family in the States. On the day of the surgery, I told her how difficult it was going to be for me to take care of him after the first week. I couldn't get more time off from work. She knew I had an empty room and asked if I'd like her to move in to help out. I thought this could be great for all of us, and I said yes. My fiancé and his mother were estranged. My fiancé didn't speak badly about her either. Surgery goes well, and in that week, I do everything for him, including moving in his mom. Even hold a jug for him to pee in while he's in bed. I love him very much. I'm doing all of this while I'm sleep deprived and exhausted. I had peace of mind knowing she was going to be home. The week passes, and he's finally able to go to the bathroom all by himself. I usually work the night shifts, so I end up getting home every day after midnight, but mother-in-law gets home at 7 p.m. every day. On my day off, I asked him if he was getting along with his mom. He said no, she hasn't been helping out. Apparently my mom was the one bringing him food every day. I at least have my mother who lives upstairs, and I thanked her. The longer my mother-in-law stays in my house, the more I realize why he doesn't speak about her. She would lock herself in her room, and only after 3 weeks of his recovery, she would throw jabs at him, calling him a loser and a lazy bum. She was only speaking to her 2 oldest daughters in Argentina. A month and a half passes. My best friends invite me to a trip to Miami for my birthday. They were paying for everything. I told my fiance, and he encouraged me to take the opportunity. It was only for 3 days. I went. I enjoyed myself. I got back on the day of my birthday. I came home to fighting. She was calling me a cheater and calling her son a loser. No cake, no presents, no flowers. My fiance shut down and said nothing, which made me feel like he was on her side at the time. I gave him no reasons for him to feel that I cheated. I had to scream and yell at him in order for him to snap out of whatever spell he was in. When he reacted, he apologized to me and began to yell at his mother, basically put her in her place. He hardly speaks to her, even though she still lives with us in our new apartment. This is not the last time she did this. I have even worse stories than this. Let me know if you want to hear more. Wow, I'm so sorry you have to carry this burden. I think you should reconsider having your mother-in-law live with you, and instead consider having a different roommate to help cover bills. Your mother-in-law sounds like she's a very toxic woman, and it's severely affecting the relationship you have with your fiance. You're such a good person for reaching out and giving her a chance. However, she had her chance, and she revealed her true self to you. Neither you or your fiance deserve that type of treatment. Protect your space. It's important to establish boundaries that keep your mother-in-law from becoming an intruder. Remain in control of your life. What would you do? Would you continue to let your mother-in-law stay with you, or would you kick her to the cold curb? Let us know in the comments below. Our first community comment comes from Meowser. Kick her to the curb if possible. She doesn't deserve the kindness you gave her. She's going to try and ruin your relationship. You remind me of me with my husband when he was in the hospital. I lived 45 minutes away and got there 30 minutes early. Took care of him, helped him walk to the bathroom to pee, all the other wifely duties. You did good, but now you gotta rewrite the good. Save your relationship from your mother-in-law. Our last story made it out of hell alive. Just. We just left hell. Finally, hubby doesn't want to go back. My mother-in-law doesn't just take the cake, she serves it with a smile on her face and enjoys watching you choke on it. Let me tell you about our hell. Before we get engaged, she would let it slide she was low-key racist, calling people outright by outdated names, Oriental, Spic, and etc. Mind you, I am adopted triracial myself, and her son married this. This also comes back into the picture later when we had kids. Once engaged, she thought it would be okay to treat me like family by yelling at me for 3 to 4 hours, saying how she bought her son a house so he could be a bachelor and should have changed his dating profile since I wasn't what she wanted for him. After telling my spouse about her rant, he confided in his brother, and only then did I get a pretend apology. The day before our wedding, she yelled at me regarding the table arrangement and insisted I change everything to her liking. On our wedding day, she pouted during the photographer and small things about how she wanted only her family side to take photos without the bride. Mind you, the bride's family didn't get separate photos without the bride in them, but as a bid to make her happy, I agreed to her tantrum. Insert more tantrums, her going after my mom on my wedding day, and so much more. Moving forward, she would constantly argue and release all my health info to her friends and family. Imagine walking in one of her many get-togethers and everyone has a personal story related to a brain injury you just sustained. Beyond that, when one got injured, she couldn't be bothered to help. Emergency or not, it was seen as needing sympathy. Broken foot, stepped on glass, anything was seen as weakness. Fair game for gossip. Not hers to share, but apparently it's okay since she got her info from the horse's mouth. That's a direct quote on why it's okay for her to spread information about me to others. Insert eye roll. Our hell includes our baby shower where she felt the need to ask my husband what gender he preferred, then talk over him while stating she only wanted granddaughters. Never mind asking him the question. Later, upon the arrival of a disappointing grandson, her racism showed up again and I got, "Oh, I guess I will have to get used to him looking so Asian." Those comments stung. I had been here all along, yet now it matters? So after being hurt for so long by her comments, I was partly done. It's her own blood, but all she could see was how imperfect he was. Racial comments aside, both parents come together to make a child, but apparently biology classes were missed in her case. Took all the joy out of the moment. But wait, 2 months later, she gaslighted me at a meeting to air out her grievances. "I don't know what to do with you. You're a basket case." I have gone through a lot with her family, setting up photo opportunities since our wedding, having her make racial remarks, listening to her to get expensive gifts from her sons and say, "But I wanted this or that." Like all 3 of them know nothing will ever be good enough and put up with her behaviors. But this was my end. I left and split my Christmas so my hubby could take our son to their house and later come to my family's house later. She has a history of ruining Christmas since none of her sons come home for the day of Christmas. Makes you wonder why. It only got worse from there. Second pregnancy, she upped the hell level just a tad, placing an unfounded CPS case on just me, texting my spouse, "We're here for you and your son." Truth be told, if me and my spouse were to break it, would have been there. The case came out of nowhere. The case was very specific, and we knew the amount of people who held the items being brought up in the case. After learning the items of the case and providing evidence, it was deemed that it was unfounded and closed as soon as it came. Later, that pregnancy, much to her dismay, we later had another son. After the case, we went to the family reunion, and other family members poked and probed us to get info for her. We both agreed for our children's safety, she should not be around them. Later, we had her granddaughter, whom she met over FaceTime. She also revealed she knew about my own father's death and made it about herself, never offering condolences. Sadly, her behaviors haven't changed, and both my spouse and I on board with cutting her out. Imagine her discussing with our children health with others or another CPS case showing up. I tried so hard to please her, and now her own son is okay with no contact. Our hell is over to much of an extent. Living it was pure hell. Cutting her off saved our marriage. We actually get to love one another versus coping with someone who wanted to reattach the umbilical cord. I wish you hope. We tried many things. The important thing is that you tried despite all the nasty and disgusting things you and your family had to endure. Cutting her off sounds like the best, wisest, and healthiest decision for you all. I commend you for putting up with her and her racist remarks for as long as you did. Often, people with such bigotries are not malicious, but ignorant, uneducated, and small-minded. This is absolutely not an excuse for her behavior. What she did was wrong. I would have cut it off in those days earlier. At the same time, it's beautiful that you had your husband's support and blessing to sever ties with your mother-in-law. At the end of the day, you choose the safety and well-being of your children, and that's the most precious of treasures to protect. We wish you a lifetime of health and happiness. All the best. It was so nice to have you join us today on rLounge. Let us know your thoughts and comments below. Be sure to like and subscribe and hit that notification bell so that you don't have to miss our next video. As always, we value you and can't wait to see you next time.